In Federalist 51, Madison famously asserted that it is of great importance in a republic not only to guard the society against the oppression of its rulers, but to guard one part of the society against the injustice of the other part. In what ways do the Bill of Rights and the amendments protect individuals from oppression by its rulers? In what ways, if any, does the Bill of Rights protect individuals or groups against infringement of their rights by other individuals and groups? Madison also said in Federalist 51 that in a society where the weaker faction is not protected from the stronger faction, anarchy reigns. Do you agree or disagree? Why? You may begin.
James Madison wrote in Federalist 51 that a dependence on the people is, no doubt, the primary control of government, but experience has taught mankind the necessity of auxiliary precautions. While Madison did not envision the Bill of Rights while writing Federalist 51, such a document was eventually ratified, a document which would serve as the auxiliary precautions he saw necessary.
Madison saw two distinct issues with Republican government: protecting the people from self-interested governmental officials and protecting minorities from tyrannical majorities. The First Amendment aims to assuage Madison's first fear by providing outlets for showing discontent with the government. For example, Nevada's none of the above option on election ballots demonstrates the importance our state places on giving voters a means of showing disdain for the political environment.
The people are also protected from any arbitrarily abusive treatment by government in a due process amendment, such as the 4th, 5th, and 8th. The 5th Amendment prohibits the government from taking our life, liberty, or property without providing due process under the law, placing safeguards around our individual rights. For example, in Missouri v. McNeely, the Supreme Court is currently determining whether the use of a warrantless blood sample would be an unconstitutional overstep of governmental boundaries.
Beyond the Bill of Rights, amendments such as the 23rd gave electoral votes to the District of Columbia, the 19th and the 26th ensured that all groups hold an equal voice in our government. Additionally, without the 14th Amendment's creation of an incorporation in cases such as Gitlow v. New York, the Bill of Rights would mean nothing because it would not apply to state sovereignty.
The Ninth Amendment provides that the rights not explicitly enumerated in the Constitution are still to be retained by the people. For example, the right to privacy is not written within the Constitution. However, under Griswold v. Connecticut, the penumbras, or shadows of privacy, are found in several amendments to protect such a right from infringement by government or certain groups.
Federalist 51 stressed the separation of powers and stated that the interest of the individual would check itself against the interest of the general public. As Bill Moyers, press secretary to President Lyndon B. Johnson, said, "Constitutional democracy is no romantic notion. It's our defense against ourselves, the one foe who might defeat us." The Bill of Rights upholds this idea, as over time the amendments have been perceived to protect one individual from another individual or group.
For example, under McDonald v. Chicago, the Second Amendment's right to bear arms implies the right to protect your life, liberty, and property from individuals who would look to infringe upon those rights. The Seventh Amendment also protects individuals by applying due process to civil cases. However, the state action doctrine makes the distinction that the Constitution, and as a result the Bill of Rights, applies only to the government. For this reason, the Bill of Rights does not directly affect private individuals or groups, allowing these parties to potentially oppress others.
Madison also wrote in Federalist 51 that in a society under the forms of which the stronger faction can readily unite and oppress the weaker, anarchy may as truly be said to reign. Because Madison's definition may have been quite different, this statement hinges on the varying standard of anarchy and the degree of chaos that it constitutes. Is anarchy mere lawlessness, or is it the utter abolition of government?
In 1860, 11 states seceded from the Union. The Civil War that ensued was surely a form of anarchy, and regardless of whether it was right or wrong for the states to secede, they did so because they felt like an oppressed minority. In a situation like this, it is evident that the government has lost the social contract with its constituents. As a true government of the people cannot exist without such an agreement, we agree with Madison that anarchy is an inevitable result of the oppression of a weaker minority faction by a stronger majority.
We agree that the rights of the minority should be valued, and by protecting the individual, the Bill of Rights adequately accomplishes just that. As Russian-American novelist Ayn Rand stated, the political function of rights is precisely to protect minorities from oppression by majorities, and the smallest minority on earth is the individual. Thank you.
Are our freedoms more threatened by the government or by private actors? Why? We give examples.
originally, the framers feared that our rights would be more threatened by the government, and that's why they created the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights' original intent was primarily to protect us from the government. I think that over time, our rights have it's kind of shifted where now we fear our rights more we fear that our rights are threatened more by private actors and less by the government.
An example of where private actors are considered infringed upon our rights is that the Boy Scouts are not allowing that homosexuals are able to join. And this is an example of how people are worried that because they aren't, because the Constitution doesn't apply to them, they are discriminated against a group of people.
However, in contrast to what Donner just said, a lot of people are using the Constitution as a way to discriminate against gays in that exact same way, in that they are saying that homosexuals aren't allowed to be married. So that would be, there's another, reason as to why the government could be looked at as infringing upon our rights more than private sectors would be.
You guys did a good job of kind of highlighting Madison's sentiment in Federalist 51. Can you talk about Madison's influences? Did he just kind of pull this out of thin air, or did he study works of other people to kind of come up with these ideas?
Well, Madison was originally opposed to having a Bill of Rights in the Constitution. His direct influence in creating Bill of Rights was Thomas Jefferson, who wrote a letter to him that actually convinced him to create a Bill of Rights or write a Bill of Rights. As for where he got the inspiration for what he actually put in the Bill of Rights,
No, put in Federalist 51.
He got his inspiration for Federalist 51 precisely from Brutus 10, which was basically an anti-federalist argument against just like the judicial branch possibly having too much power, separation of power. So this whole Federalist paper kind of addressed those concerns.
Well, I'm asking, you told me that, Federalist 10 is the reason why he wrote, Brutus 10 is the reason why he wrote Federalist 51, but the sentiment that you guys so eloquently discussed isn't just Madison's. He's taking pieces from other people, and what other influences, what historical figures influenced him.
well, in Federalist 51, he talks a lot about a separation of powers, which was greatly the idea of Montesquieu, a philosopher from France. So that is one inspiration that inspired a part of what he wrote in Federalist 51.
He's probably also taking a lot of the anarchy discussion from histories. The framers were right around, well, never mind, that was before. But anyway, they have the English Revolution, and that was kind of an example of, the minority getting oppressed by a majority, and anarchy was kind of centered right there too.
Also, there are many allusions to Rome and Greece, how they had different, they had the city, Greece was city-states at one point, and then Rome was a giant republic. So a lot of his arguments came from that as well.
How are intellectual rights protected in the Constitution?
In the Constitution or the Bill of Rights Amendment?
In the Constitution. Intellectual rights, the question.
There is a copyright law within the Constitution that protects basically patents and allows the federal government to issue them so that people are allowed to or inspired to be creative and invent new things that might further progress and have credit for them.
What's the most important protection against oppression from the rulers of the Bill of Rights?
I would say the freedom to petition and assemble is our greatest protection from oppression, as it allows us to, in a way, actively tell our government that they're doing something wrong, they need to change that.
I would disagree. I would say the due process in a whole is the greatest protection we have, because it prevents the government from doing any arbitrary movements against our person.
Kind of building off what Donner said, all the other rights would be kind of unnecessary if we didn't have the due process amendment, due process rights in the Bill of Rights because the government could just take us arbitrarily and put us in jail without valuing any of our other rights. So the due process rights definitely put a procedure behind it and ensure that the people are treated fairly under the law.
As the editor-in-chief of our high school's newspaper, the Red and Blue, the First Amendment as a whole, but especially the right to the freedom of the press is extremely important, in that the media acts as a check on the government. It reinforces that idea of the separation of power, and that the media is there making sure that our government is acting in a correct way and not infringing upon our rights.
You wouldn't stop there.
I got you guys later, so.
Can I just hear the question?
I was going to ask you whether the Second Amendment is designed more to protect against the government or to protect against private actors. And whether it's designed that way and whether that's the way that we view it today. You can answer in 2 days.